Okay, this is kind of old, but let's get into it.
This is a catastrophe in a war-torn part of the world that has bitter experience of catastrophic events, and it keeps getting worse. The first earthquake, 7.8
The assessment of the death toll as of now, last night, was 30,000 people dead. Just like, understand that.
magnitude. We are now hearing, Savannah, of another earthquake in the same area, 7.6 magnitude.
That is very sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. Regardless, if no one lives there.
Earth and aftershocks in cities in Iraq. And Savannah, the numbers are stunning. Almost 3,000 buildings have collapsed. More than 1,300
And the worst part is, so those of you who don't know, it lasted up to 2 minutes, which is extremely rare for an earthquake.
people have been killed, and that number inevitably will rise. Thousands have been injured, and thousands, Savannah, are now on their way to try and take part in this desperate rescue operation. Whole buildings collapsing from the earthquake's power.
Oh my God.
Unable to stand against this quake, almost 8 on the Richter scale. The morning light revealing devastation and wreckage. A toddler in Syria, bloody but conscious, pulled from the rubble. And other survivors taken from collapsed buildings, lucky to be alive. 3 huge tremors snapping streetlights and sending car alarms wailing.
This is
The
so
moments
insane.
recorded on security camera footage. This is one of the region's worst quakes in decades, striking while people slept just after 4 a.m. The quake hitting a huge area of southern Turkey and northern Syria.
This is this is massive, by the way. More than that night than 9/11. Yep.
Area already war-torn with hundreds of refugees. The tremors felt as far as Beirut, Jerusalem and Gaza.
No, you're fine.
In northern Syria, they are searching for survivors in opposition-held territory. Hospitals there already overwhelmed with the injured.
This is so insane.
We need the international community to do something to help us, to support us.
People are on their own. Just imagine the worst disaster in Turkish history, natural disaster in Turkish history, and people are on their own. It's insane.
Turkey's President Erdogan said rescue workers will be joined by troops to search for survivors, but they have a vast area to cover. Those searching calling for silence as they try and listen for trapped survivors. This rescuer asking someone trapped, what colour are you wearing? Are you wearing pink? A frantic rush to find those caught in the rubble. The White House offering to provide any and all assistance to Turkey, although the statement left out any reference to the US working directly with Syria.
Kira, 7.8 magnitude quake. Can you just put that into perspective for us?
Yeah. Well, Savannah, scientists say 7.8 is equivalent to 32 Hiroshima bombs. And remember, as I mentioned at the top there, we are now hearing of another earthquake of a similar magnitude. And you know, Savannah, I have spent plenty of time in that region along the Turkish-Syria border.
It was because it was such a shallow one. That's why it was so massive. It was a very shallow earthquake. It was intense and shallow.
Place with many war refugees, many people living in destitution without electricity. This truly is a tragedy piled upon tragedy, Savannah.
This is worse than the 1999 earthquake.
We begin in Turkey and northern Syria, where in the early hours of the morning, a series of powerful earthquakes have caused widespread damage and killed almost 1,500 people. Many thousands more have been injured, and an unknown number of people are still missing. The biggest tremor had a magnitude of 7.8 with an epicenter in Turkey's Gaziantep province, which borders northern Syria. It came just after 4 in the morning local time. But there have been almost 30 other shocks in the region, all powerful enough to magnify the damage. The earthquake was felt 700 kilometers away in Gaza and in Egypt. Well, Turkey has declared a state of emergency. The Syrian government is also taking emergency measures, but the response in that country is being made far more complex by the effects of civil war. Now, while Turkey's allies, including the United States, the European Union and NATO, have offered help, there have been far fewer offers for Syria. In fact, many Western countries have shunned its governments for its actions during the civil war, but they also consider many of the opposition rebel groups to be terrorist organisations. Well, the casualty figures are simply horrific. Turkey's President Erdogan says at least 12 people have died in his country, with nearly 5,400 people injured. Well, Syrian government figures say at least 326 people have been killed. And the White Helmets Rescue Group, which operates in opposition-held parts of Syria, says more than 221 people are known to have died in those areas, with thousands missing and thousands of buildings having collapsed. Those figures, though, are certain to rise. Well, let's cross live now to Lina Sinjab, who's our correspondent in Beirut. And Lina, before we go on to talk about what happened, I believe you felt the earthquake, didn't you?
Certainly, it was really the early hours of the morning here in Beirut. With the difference of timing, it was like around 3 a.m., 3:15 a.m. in the morning, where I felt the whole building was shaking, and items moving, chandeliers moving in the ceiling, and then some stuff like falling on the ground.
This is crazy. Once again, it was 2 minutes. I want you guys to absorb that. Normally they last 30-40 seconds. 2 minutes. And that's why it was so severe as well. It was shallow, it was intense, and it was long. Okay? Understand how insane that is.
The quickest, the hardest earthquake that we've ever felt in this region was a reminder of the explosion in the port of Beirut, in 2020.
Look at that.
But far.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
More, in the scale.
Look at that. It's going.
Of it,
it's still going.
But luckily in Lebanon, there are no casualties or any damages reported in comparison to what we are seeing and, watching happening both
Just
in Turkey
terrifying.
and in Syria.
Absolutely, Lina. Let's talk about what happened in Turkey, because the devastation there is horrendous.
It is. And, as we talked, just like, in the past hour or so, there were reports of another earthquake hitting central Turkey. So we're still waiting to hear, if it caused any damage. But the aftermath of the early morning one is massive. It hit the province of Gaziantep. Hitting at least 10 cities there on the stretch of the borderline with Syria. Turkey is a country that is prone to earthquake. It's learned how to deal with it by living it over years and years, and develop its infrastructure, its response mechanism, its health system. Yet the scale today is.
It's still like I said, I just experienced one couple days ago too. The earthquake that hit Buffalo, I felt that. That shit to me is still scary. It was like a what? It was like a 4 or something? And it's still scary. Like it is. Like you can run away from a hurricane. You can predict a hurricane. You can predict a tsunami, okay? You can predict a storm. You cannot predict an earthquake. Tornadoes and earthquakes are my biggest irrational fears. Or tornadoes, you can still kind of predict a tornado. I lived in Ohio for a couple of years trying to get over tornado fear, but now I live in Colorado, so that didn't work. I love Colorado so much. You can at least still run from a tornado, too. You can't run from an earthquake!
She called for international support to arrive, and many countries have already announced its readiness to come to Turkey for rescue operation. We've heard an earlier government officials saying that Azerbaijan is already sending 400 of its rescue team, experts in rescue operation. Other countries will follow suit, and we will know about them as they're announced throughout the hours of the day. But the images coming from Turkey are, shocking.
That's
People
crazy.
had to run, sometimes barefoot in the early hours of the morning at a time of a winter storm that is hitting the.
Oh yeah, that was a part I forgot. It was in the middle of a fucking blizzard. It hit in the dead of night, in the middle of a fucking blizzard. This is like a disaster.
The whole region, they had to come out in the cold, sitting in their cars, or even standing in.
Twister was a scary movie
in the open air
time.
to seek shelter.
And let's talk about Syria. Of course, parts of Syria have also been hit. The situation there is a bit more complex in terms of getting information out and indeed help in.
Well, definitely there are information coming out, but, scattered between the government and opposition-held area. There are incredible, rescue teams and volunteers who are in, the opposition area who are reporting the situation, but calling it a natural disaster. It's beyond their capacity to help. Don't forget that in northern Syria, area right by the border of Turkey. This is an area that was facing heavy bombardment by both government and Russia over the past decade, destroying its infrastructure, destroying its hospitals. And what is left is barely minimum to help the thousands who are in need at the moment. They're calling for aid, they're calling for international communities to support them. But it's hard to tell at this moment if any of the aid coming to Turkey will manage to cross the border and help those in need in Syria, mainly in refugee camps and, poorly, infrastructured area.
So I think there was a double earthquake. There was a 7.8 and then a 7.5. And there were a lot of aftershocks. And earthquake ground moving. Oh, that's crazy. What? I don't know. I thought I heard it was a double. That's crazy. No, see, this is what I'm saying. I want to put in perspective to you. Look at this. When the ground beneath you, we see the ground of the earth as so fucking solid. But when it's doing this, nope. This is so unsettling. Because, look at this. This is so unsettling. The ground is moving. It's moving. No. Fuck earthquakes. Fuck tornadoes. Fuck everything else. Fuck every other natural disaster. A fire you can run. The wildfires. Okay? With a wildfire, you can, heat up a marshmallow. When the fault line is broken, you're like, this is just, it's so unsettling.
Been around 30 aftershocks. The largest has come within the last hour. We've been hearing that a new 7.5 tremor near 120 kilometers north of the epicenter of the first earthquake in Gaziantep. So an earthquake of around 7.5 in magnitude has struck southeastern Turkey, according to the country's Disaster and Emergency Management Authority, the AFAD. We are now awaiting, however, reports of any new damage caused by that. Well, let's cross live now to Istanbul and speak to the BBC's Emre Tamil, who is there for us. And Emre, give us an understanding of what has been happening in that area where the first earthquake.
First of all, a second massive earthquake in Turkey less than an hour ago, as you said. Its center was in southern province of Kahramanmaraş again. Turkey's Disaster and Emergency Management Authority announced its magnitude as 7.6 and emphasized that it's a new earthquake, not an aftershock. Details are still coming in. The first quake was centered in Pazarcık district of Kahramanmaraş province and struck at 4:17 a.m. local time. The magnitude of this first quake was announced at 7.4 at first, then revised at 7.7, and as Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan emphasized that it is the second biggest earthquake in Turkey's history. President Erdogan said the death toll rose to 912 in 10 provinces. He also added that 5,385 people were wounded, 2,400.
This number is so much higher now. I just want people to understand this too as we're watching.
And 70 people were saved from the rubble as a result of the rescue efforts. However, as he said, I quote him, "I can't predict how much the death toll will rise as search and rescue efforts continue," he said, and the number of buildings which has been destroyed is close to 3,000. A level 4 alarm has been declared, which means Turkey is calling.
Yes, exactly. The blizzard. It's not just the cold, guys. It's not just the cold. It was a blizzard. Now they're stuck into the freezing cold.
For international assistance. And President Erdogan announced that 45 countries had so far offered assistance, and authorities scrambled rescue teams and supply aircraft to the affected area. State of emergency was declared in all affected provinces, and authorities urged people not to use mobile phones to allow rescuers to coordinate the efforts. The chief of the Turkish Red Crescent Relief Agency issued a statement saying that they urgently need blood donations and appealed people to do that. And Turkish armed forces have set up an air corridor to ensure that search and rescue teams will be able to
There's stuff that the media is not showing you too, by the way.
Reach to all zones affected by the earthquakes.
We heard earlier on from President Erdogan talking about this being the biggest earthquake disaster the country has seen for nearly 100 years.
Yes, Turkey is among the most earthquake-prone countries in the world, and this is the second biggest earthquake in Turkey's history. The biggest one was in eastern province of Erzincan in 1939 with a magnitude of 7.9, and this quake claimed more than 30,000 lives. Most of the people obviously remembered the big quake, which
I think that number is much higher, and I don't know why. It's just because it's going to sound conspiratorial. I genuinely believe the Turkish government, is not being honest about the numbers.
happened in
I'm just going to be real
1999,
with you. I
which
think
was
it's
a severe quake,
like around
devastated
30,000.
Izmit and heavily populated eastern Marmara Sea region near Istanbul, country's biggest city. This quake killed more than 17,000 people, and obviously, as President Erdogan said earlier, authorities is really fearful that that toll can rise.
And of course, we were mentioning earlier on, you mentioned earlier on, as the earthquake hit, the weather had at that point turned extremely cold, which of course is making the rescue operation and conditions for those who have survived very difficult indeed.
Yes, it's really difficult because earthquake hit at a very early
it
time.
was in the summertime too.
4:17 local time, and obviously we're in the middle of the winter, freezing conditions in these regions. We are talking about eastern Turkey and southeastern Turkey. Winter conditions are really sharp, and which makes rescue efforts difficult than ever.
People are freezing. They may be only putting their immediate detached caused by earthquake. They haven't even done like a full, they haven't even found everyone who died initially. Keep in mind, there's no one coming from most of these parts. They have not even sent out enough people to find the dead initially. 24 hours later, there were large parts of the affected areas that did not see anyone.
The tremor may have happened before dawn, but the dangers caused by the damage to buildings remain very active. Just take a look at this. It's an apartment block in Halilay, just 100 kilometers from the epicenter. As you can see, traffic and pedestrians are so close, it's seemingly not even aware that it's about to collapse. It happens just slowly enough, thank goodness, that everyone in the immediate area seems to be able to get to safety. You can also
and you know what the worst part is? There's probably still people in there because they think it's over. That's horrifying.
See how the building seems to collapse almost vertically, pushing out the huge cloud of dust and rubble. It's not thought that anyone was inside.
The quakes caused widespread devastation and a catastrophic loss of life, both in Turkey and across the border in northern Syria. The combined it is a staggering figure, one that is expected to rise as search and rescue efforts continue.
Buildings collapse, people trapped underneath the rubble, first responders rushing to the scene, trying to pull people out, the chaotic situation where people are screaming for their family members that they can't locate, all while first responders are telling people to remain silent so that they can listen to the cries for help of people that are trapped beneath the rubble as they work to try and pull them out and rush them to safety. We know also that we've seen toddlers and children being pulled from the rubble, passed from first responder to first responder. First responders are doing everything they can to try and save people, but the entire world is watching what is no doubt a humanitarian crisis unfold.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind, I mean, this quake hit in an area that is home to millions of Syrian refugees. How are we hearing as far as Syria coping with this tragedy? How are they coping with it?
It's absolutely devastating. I mean, as you mentioned, this is an earthquake that hit, and then, of course, another one that hit in the middle of the night when people were sleeping.
Yeah, I think it was two different ones. I don't think it was an aftershock.
We know that Syrian officials have activated the military from all across the country to rush to the northern part of the country to try and help. A similar scene to what we're seeing in Turkey.
It's a very difficult task for us. We need help. We need the international community to do something to help us, to support us. Northwest Syria now, it's a disaster area. We need help from everyone to save our people.
President of Turkey, President Erdogan, saying that some 45 countries have reached out and they continue to reach out, offering help with search and rescue. Everything from countries like India to Germany and Poland, even war-torn Ukraine. President Zelensky offering his assistance as well, doing everything they can to try and help the people of Turkey. I want to read for you this statement from the White House. Jake Sullivan putting out the statement. He says, quote, "We stand ready to provide any and all needed assistance. President Biden has directed U.S. aid and other federal government partners to assess U.S. response options to help those most affected. We will continue to closely monitor the situation in coordination with the government of Turkey."
Okay, I'm gonna show you guys this video. This video is it's an extremely surreal one. It doesn't feel real. Imagine every high rise within eyesight collapsing around you. It's shaking. Jesus Christ. There's entire towns that are wiped away. Entire towns. Just everything collapses. So fucking scary. There was a fire at a Turkish port as well that cannot be extinguished. Look at this.
İskenderun limanı.
It's absolutely devastating.
Aman yarabbim. Dünden beri böyle.
You can't contain this. There's no way you can contain
Dünden beri yanıyor. Durmuyor.
It's all of this feels so apocalyptic. Just nothing. Absolutely nothing. Maybe a few buildings here and there. Turkish women, their calls coming from another building, but there's no one here to help us. Yeah, look at this. Look at this.
Diyorlar gelen giden yok burada. Kimse yok. Kendimiz çıkarmaya çalışıyoruz, çıkartamıyoruz. Adam 24
there's no one. Not a single government official has shown up in a lot of these places. Even now. This was filmed during the second earthquake.
Seismologists say Monday's magnitude 7.8 earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria is probably going to be one of the deadliest this decade. Only 2 others from 2013 to 2022 were of the same magnitude. Compared to the 6.2 quake that hit Italy in 2016 and killed some 300 people, the Turkey-Syria earthquake released 250 times.
It's in an extraordinarily dense area too. All of these put together have made a absolute devastating disaster.
As much energy
of the situation,
according to one expert. So why was it so bad? The epicenter of the quake was in the Turkish province of Gaziantep and at the relatively shallow depth of about 11 miles on the East Anatolian Fault. It then radiated towards the northeast, bringing devastation to central Turkey and Syria. The severity was due to the fact that the East Anatolian Fault is a strike-slip fault. In those, solid rock plates are pushing up against each other across a vertical fault line, building stress until one slips in a horizontal motion, which releases a tremendous amount of strain. That, in turn, can trigger an earthquake. In Monday's quake, there was a more than 62-mile rupture between the Anatolian and Arabian plates.
62 miles. That's so insane.
11 minutes after the initial quake, the region was hit by a 6.7 magnitude aftershock. A 7.5 magnitude quake came hours later, followed by another spasm in the afternoon.
Jesus
Experts
Christ.
say activity is spreading to neighboring faults, and seismicity may continue for a while. Monday's quake already has the highest death toll in Turkey since 1999.
It's going to be the highest.
Magnitude struck a region near Istanbul and killed more than 17,000 people.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely devastating. Different news outlets are saying 2 different things. I want you to understand that, by the way. One is saying it was a double, so I don't know. The one we just watched before this said it was just another one.
Turkish search and rescue teams that are very experienced in dealing with this, who have been deployed to the earthquake zone.
No, they haven't. This is a lie. This is a fucking lie, by the way. Why is CNN saying this? I don't understand. They've not been, nothing was deployed. This is a lie. Keep in mind, I don't know why they're lying for the Turkish government. It makes no fucking sense. Okay, this is really fucked up. So this is from a building that was deemed earthquake safe. Luxury apartments in Turkey being sold as earthquake safe, okay? And this is one of them. This one was built, I think this one was just built. One of the ones was just built, like at the end of 2022. This video is going viral on Turkish Twitter. A brand new building, yes, supposedly built according to state-enforced strict earthquake norms collapses. This is a luxury apartment. I want you guys to understand this. Earthquake safe apartment. And look at what completely happens to it. Yep. Just absolutely devastated. Just absolutely fucking devastated. This is just the amounts of corruption that have run through the Turkish government there's no way that Erdogan stays in power after this. And I'm not just saying they'll vote him out. This is an enraging disaster. Such an enraging disaster. Tens of thousands of people are dead and their bodies are frozen. People are dying right now under rubble, okay?
Yine sallanıyor bak. Hala devam ediyor. Gitme. Sallanıyor abi, gitme. Sallanıyor, bu tarafa gelin. Gelmez abi, uzak.
There was a streamer, I think, who lost his mother.
Now, we always talk about the epicenter, but in this case, we should talk about the epiline. Here's the original 7.8. Here's the new 7.5. About 100 miles from one side to the other, this earth slipped. And this earth slipped in what we call a strike slip, where the plates are touching and all of a sudden they slide sideways. So the primary movement is the building moving sideways and then moving back. Unlike when we have the Ring of Fire, where we have the subduction plates, and sometimes plates will go up and plates will go down, causing the tsunamis. This is more of a sliding back and forth. Why that matters is because the buildings don't want to go back and forth. And then the secondary waves can begin to go up and down as well. There is the strike where the heaviest damage will be right now from the initial quake. The new quake is far enough away from the first quake, about 60 miles, that we will see more damage in other areas as well. Two plates collide here. This is one of the areas that we expect this type of scenario. It hasn't happened in a long time, especially not a 7.8.
A total of 2,786 search and rescue staff are on duty. And
That's it? That's nothing. 2,000. What the fuck?
Is increasing every second. It takes some time for our teams from other provinces to arrive due to the adverse weather conditions. But they will all be in the field. The epicenter of the quake was in southeastern Turkey, but it also hit parts of neighboring Syria, leaving a trail of devastation. With
so
members
sad.
of Syria's opposition civil defense force,
Syria needs a fucking break.
Also known as the White Helmets, claiming many rebel-held areas in the northwest of the country are in a state of catastrophe.
Oh, 4.5 is nothing. I literally just had a 4.5 2 days ago. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. Keep in mind, there was very little help for these people. I wanna make it very clear. They've sent almost no one out. The military, maybe they sent out 6,000 tops. Wait, what? 2 more earthquakes happened today? What? Dude, what the fuck is happening? Oh my god. What was the magnitude of it? The earthquakes in Turkey and Syria have left many without shelter and supplies. They desperately need help with a winter storm coming. There's another winter storm coming for these people, by the way. Think about that. Have buildings up to actual code. How about that? Like, the buildings are not up to code in any capacity. That is why there's so much fucking devastation. No one actually checked if these buildings were, like, up to code, because they weren't. So much fucking corruption, dude. Capitalists don't care about you. This is like capitalism. Let's fucking be clear. They take shortcuts, and the shortcuts that they take are not up to code, and no one checks because there's fucking money under the table being passed around, okay? And this is what happens. This is the fucking outcome of capitalism. I hate to be that fucking annoying leftist, but it is. At least in Japan, where capitalism thrives, they still look after their own fucking people and build up to code. This is insane.
We have received several offers of international aid for our...
Fuck this guy. Literally. Oh my god! You don't even deserve hell. There was a story, I don't know where I don't know how I can find it now, but there was a story of a family who had to rent a digger on their own. That's how desperate these people are. I'm not even joking.
The death toll is climbing this morning. More than 5,000 confirmed dead and more than 20,000 injured. Marcus Moore is live on the scene in Turkey. Good morning, Marcus.
Well, Robin, good morning. Right now, rescuers are at the site of an 8-story apartment building that collapsed during the quake.
Crazy.
They have pushed us back as searchers sift through the debris, some of them with their bare hands in a bucket, moving bricks and concrete, searching for any signs of life. And right now, they are in the most critical hours as they search for survivors. First responders seen working to clear the rubble of this collapsed building.
My
when
god!
The one right next to it comes crashing down. This reporter covering the urgent search and rescue efforts live when people start frantically running for safety. As this building behind them collapses. Later, he spots a mother and her children and races to help them get to safety. This morning, a race against time in the city of Diyarbakir, where searchers pick through the rubble of a destroyed apartment building. You can see the team of rescuers on one of the upper floors there, what's left of this apartment building. They have their flashlights, some of them searching through the debris with their bare hands. They're looking for survivors under the threat of aftershocks. Survivors whose homes were destroyed, forced to spend the night at makeshift camps like this one in freezing temperatures.
Some people didn't even have a camp. They had to make a bonfire.
Trapped in the rubble, the cold making the fight for survival that much harder. In Syria, the destruction just as devastating. These workers, known as the White Helmets, a Syrian rescue group, digging
Aren't
through
the White Helmets bad? Like, aren't they like super? Aren't they like bad guys? I don't know.
Mountain of debris to rescue a child.
Jesus.
Grateful, she opens her eyes alive. Nearby, you can hear more cries for help. People trapped under the rubble. The capital of Aleppo, one of the worst hit areas. So many of the children here now orphans. The UN estimating 6.9 million people are internally displaced in Syria. The earthquake adding another layer of suffering to the war-torn country. This hospital, so overwhelmed with victims, a doctor making this plea.
We have information that hundreds of patients are still under the debris. The situation is too bad. We need urgent help.
Droves of volunteers crowd the Istanbul airport, eager to help. The Biden administration sending 2 search and rescue teams to Turkey. One 78-member team, highly skilled in search and rescue, based out of Los Angeles, heading to Turkey this morning to help search for survivors. And there are scenes like this playing out across this region. I can tell you the mood here in Diyarbakir is a somber one. Also, people are anxious, but at the same time, they are determined and hopeful. There are glimmers of hope as the death toll continues to rise. Just this morning, rescuers were able to pull a 29-year-old woman out of this apartment building and take her to the hospital, one of the many people who have been rescued amidst all of the destruction here.
Like, look, there's nothing. There's fucking no help. This is crazy. I'm actually, like, the only runway at Hatay Airport in southern Turkey tore open during the earthquake. So no one can get stuff flown in here. It doesn't look real. No, I agree. Yeah, this is... Like, look at this. Just look at this. Just understand. People can't even help each other because of this. People can't even help each other. Wow, dude, I just saw this geological survey in Europe says tremors were felt as far away as Greenland and Denmark. This was so insane.
Everything is well organized or not well organized.
It's clearly not well organized. What are you saying? It's already within the first 24 hours. There should have been the entire military should have been on the ground. What is she saying? Time will not tell. What an insane thing to say. Kids do not have access to jackets. Children are left shoeless because when this happened, it was at nighttime and all people had was the clothes on their backs. And these kids were not wearing shoes indoors. Hundreds of thousands of children without shoes and jackets. Like, oh my God.
But everybody is blaming the urbanization in the area.
No, it's not just the urbanization. It's because they didn't do the proper protocols when building these buildings. Here, look at this. I hear that so far there are no international rescue teams on the ground in northwest Syria to help the Syria'S civil defense. This is fucking insane. 23 million people in Turkey and Syria have been affected.
The World Health Organization is warning some 23 million people could be affected by the 7.8 and 7.5 earthquakes that struck southeastern Turkey and northern Syria on Monday, along with hundreds of aftershocks. The death toll from the...
Look at this. Look at this. Look how far it's spread. Holy fuck.
Earthquakes has risen to more than 5,000, expected to dramatically rise as search and rescue efforts intensify. More than 20,000 people have been injured.
We haven't slept all night. We're really scared.
We are in the street. We do not have a place to go. There is either the mosque or the street.
Don't you want to go home?
We're scared for the children. When we went back home, a new earthquake took place, so we went back to the street.
Dude, yeah, what do you do? Oh my God.
We remembered the days of the war, but this is God's will.
The Syrian government in Damascus is only allowing aid to enter the region through one border crossing. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says more than 4 million in northwest Syria, where the deadly earthquake struck, already rely on humanitarian assistance.
Building housing and making sure this time it's safe is going to take a long time.
Is that considered an aftershock, or is that considered a separate earthquake?
Good question.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's actually quite a technical question. The initial opinion of most seismologists would be that indeed it's an aftershock. However, this earthquake, the second earthquake, occurred on a separate geological structure than the main earthquake.
Okay. It was actually two different earthquakes. One triggered the other. That's insane. I know that there was the shallow plate, right? So this is the shallow plate. And then there was this plate. Okay. There's this one too. Okay. I don't know which one of these moved first, right? I think it was the gray one moved first, I think. I think that's what happened. And then because of that, it moved this one. And this also shifted. And I think that's what happened. I could be wrong though. I think that's...
This was a 6-story block of flats in Şanlıurfa in southeastern Turkey. Rescue teams must work quickly, but carefully.
Yeah, I saw that. Listen. People, if there is more news regarding this, I will get back to it, but as of right now, there's still people being rescued. I hope for that to be accelerated.